Chapter 326 Looting Treasures. In an unknown dimension shrouded in chaotic energy, a man slowly opened his eyes, sensing the abrupt disappearance of his clone's connection. Valoros, the Ethereum realm? The man read the memory of the clone. The unification of dimensions, Malgrin, the amalgamation of will. 3 successful experiments, not bad. Unfortunately, the clone died too quickly, the amalgamation of will isn't finished yet. What a pity, the man frowned. Spreading his clone in all dimensions, it can be said that this clone of his was one of the most efficient. 3 successful experiments in just one dimension? How efficient is that? The amalgamation of will seem to have some potential. It's a pity the clone died too quickly. Looking at the man who had killed his clone, a hint of anger flickered within him. Just as he was about to retaliate in anger, he suddenly felt a shift in the origin of law. Not now. Advancement to the ultimate realm takes priority. In the Ethereum realm on the Cursed Continent, Maximus felt excitement surge within him as he gazed at the forbidden forest ahead. According to Valoros' memories, this land was a veritable laboratory filled with all kinds of lab equipment, experimental subjects, data, and more. Just right. It can replenish my expenditures. Maximus muttered happily. Dealing with Valoros wasn't easy. Though the battle was brief, the resources he expended nearly depleted his entire property. If calculated, it could probably buy a complete Tier 8 ultimate treasure set for his foundation. Unfortunately, he had yet to find one for sale in the Myriad World Mall. Maximus could only wait for it to be updated in the full version and explore other transdimensional platforms. Flying across the continent like land, Maximus scoured the entire place with his domain, which now spanned over 1 trillion kilometers in radius. The continuous expansion of his domain even surpassed the range of his divine consciousness. However, after reaching 1 trillion kilometers, it seemed that the expansion slowed down. After all, the expansion was in radius, not in area. Each meter was equivalent to trillions of kilometers. A few days later, after Maximus had turned the forbidden forest upside down, he looked at his harvest. TSK, what a harvest, Maximus muttered with a light in his eyes. Valoros possessed the most advanced mechanic and alchemy apparatus Maximus had ever seen, even surpassing the Tier 9 equipment he was proud of. It had to be said that the foundation of an apex sovereign living this long isn't something a nouveau riche like him can imagine. This is still because Valoros live in seclusion. If those were the likes of Dean Fialon, Maximus couldn't even imagine. In addition to the mechanic and alchemy apparatus, Valoros also had the largest collection of Aethercore he had ever seen. 1,000 Tier 9 Aethercores. Aethercore was the most advanced supercomputer built using a combination of alchemy and mechanics. They could effortlessly process a multitude of data. Even Maximus' empire had only 1 Aethercore, yet it could easily handle all the arrays, virtual apps, and miscellaneous tasks within the empire. Looking at 1,000 of them made him feel as though he had struck it rich. Whether in the Ethereum realm or the Myriad World Mall, these items were incredibly expensive. By price alone, they were more expensive than dimensional treasures of the same grade. 1,000 equivalent dimensional treasures? Hell yeah! Just these could pay back my expenses, Maximus thought. Although Aethercores are only used to process data, they were treasure makers. With 1,000 Aethercores, one could simulate an epoc's worth of information in seconds. Although not as fast as his system, they were controllable. He could even let his people participate in some miracle-making projects. These will be the foundation of the empire from now on, Maximus thought. Manipulating the Aethercores, he searched for any experimental data within them. Unfortunately, to his dismay, they seemed to have been cleared. With the death of Valoros, all files self-destructed and corrupted. Even after deep scanning, no files remained. Carefully storing the Aethercores in his storage dimension, he looked at his remaining harvest. Unlike the rest, it was only miscellaneous items without much value. Like the remains of the ancients who first roamed the world. Rare plants and minerals could be found in the Ethereum realm. Unique treasures created by the world. Maximus didn't pay much attention to them and put them all in his storage dimension. Although other gadgets are a little interesting. Compared to others, these things weren't worth mentioning and could easily be bought in the Myriad World Mall. I guess the only valuable thing left is this array, Maximus muttered, looking at the dense, invisible array surrounding the forbidden forest. Through exploration over the past few days, he had estimated that the area of the forbidden forest was at least 1,000 light-years, much larger than most continental dimensions in the arcane continent. To place an array in such a land would require massive manpower and materials. Especially the time it must have taken epochs for Valoros to surround this land with a formation array. Even if he had unlimited manpower and materials, it would probably take him tens of thousands of years. To have a ready-made array couldn't make Maximus much happier. It was equivalent to having a ready-made base. Maximus decided to transfer his empire here. After all, it was already destroyed and only Moonshadow City remains. Moving a city by hand should be easy for him. After tabulating all his gains, Maximus teleported back to his empire. In Moonshadow City. Huh? Is that His Majesty? Did His Majesty come back? Is the Emperor of the Westle Empire really dead? Although they already knew from various sources that the Emperor of the Westle Empire had died, they still didn't dare to venture out of the city. Who knew if it was a trap? Thus, seeing their Emperor in the flesh, they couldn't be more shaken. The suffering they had endured for years seemed to dissipate as they witnessed the dawn of the Empire. Soon, the chanting of Maximus' name rang throughout the city. The voices of trillions of people echoed his name, venting all their suffering and grievances throughout the years. Looking at the people chanting his name, Maximus smiled. Signaling them to stop, Maximus opened his mouth. The people of the Moonlight Empire. The war is over. The war that caused us death and destruction. The war that put us in misery and loss. The war to declare the supreme sovereignty of this land. This war is over. The winner is us, the Moonlight Empire. The people of the Moonlight Empire. From now on, the Moonlight Empire shall reign supreme. With Maximus' declaration, the amalgamation of will seemed to be agitated as the people's belief surged. Seeing this, Maximus only smiled and quickly teleported to the castle. In the castle? As Maximus appeared, Skien the others waiting for his arrival jumped for joy. Dad, you've returned. Asha said happily, clinging to him. Grandpa. Lila and Maya greeted. Maximus, Sky said, looking to see if Maximus was injured. How's the rest? They're already in stable condition, Asha said. Scanning inside, he saw his wives and children breathing evenly as they slept. Isabella, Rose, Luna, Livia, and Jane, who fought and held back Khan, were still injured. Even his children, Nathan, Sam, and Luke, were sleeping soundly. Thinking of this, he couldn't help but grit his teeth. He should have at least tortured that bastard. How dare he hurt his family? Fortunately, it seemed that they were already stable. Their bodies were already healing on their own. If not for exhaustion and lack of energy, they would be able to get up like normal people. On the other side were his wives, Hazel, Erica, Angeline, Irene, and Emma looked at them meticulously. It seemed that Sky and the others didn't tell them about his return. Even Neo and the others who were managing the Empire didn't inform them of the news. It seemed that they didn't want to add further worry to their mothers. Opening the door, there was shock in their eyes. Husband? It's me, I'm back, Maximus smiled. Why you? You've returned, they shouted as they lunged into him and embraced him. Where have you been? Why didn't you tell us anything? Are you injured? One by one, they asked questions endlessly, as if venting. Soon after feeling his warmth, they calmed down. I'm sorry, I worried you. As for the reason, it's a long story, let's talk about that later. More importantly, Maximus turned his head to the people sleeping on the beds. Mobilizing his domain, he infused energy into them, bringing them back to their peak form. Arg. Groaning, they slowly woke up. Maximus. Husband. Father. As they woke up, they looked at him in shock and joy. Feeling their bodies as good as new, they couldn't help but leap, embracing Maximus. Looking at their smiles, he heaved a sigh of relief. Everything is over, let's take our time. Chapter 327 Conquering the Westle Empire. A few weeks later. After a brief celebration and adjustment. Over 1 trillion soldiers and hundreds of millions of officials of the Empire boarded the ships to conquer the Westle Empire. For this, Maximus even bought some Tier 9 ships from the Shadowhunter Guild. As for the unspoken rules or whatsoever, after killing Valoros, the Cursed Continent is now his domain. Coupled with his strength in the Cursed Continent, no rule could restrict him anymore. Conquering the people of the Westle Empire is to let them recognize the Supreme Emperor of the continent. This is to unify the amalgamation of will and convert them to the people of the Moonlight Empire. Maximus was too lazy to pay attention to this and had his subordinates do this troublesome job. Over 1 trillion soldiers are enough to suppress all dissent. Hundreds of millions of officials were also brought to bring order and arrange all people in the Westle Empire. After everything was arranged, Maximus continued his reunion with his family as he planned for the future of the empire. A few days later, the Tier 9 ships docked on various borders of the Westle Empire.
What is that?
Is it an enemy invasion? It should be the Moonlight Empire. How it has finally come to this day. Although the appearance of the Tier 9 ships caused commotion, it didn't cause much panic. They already knew about the death of their emperor for weeks. They were devastated at first. However, after thinking about it, they realized they were worried for nothing. They were just ordinary people living in this cursed world. Some of them were from little kingdoms, unknown empires, and even top empires. Yet, just like a snap of a finger, they became the people of the Westle Empire. Though unwilling at the start, they slowly accepted their emperor for his righteousness and generosity. They also forgot about their origin and fully supported their emperor. What is happening now is just another change of rule. This is the time of war, and the winner is the king. They, as ordinary people, just needed to follow who was in the lead. They could only hope that this new emperor of theirs would be as generous as their previous ruler. Soon, millions of soldiers descended from the ship, looking coldly at the crowd. Seeing that they were not rioting and looked at them curiously, they also relaxed. Ahem, I'm Kirk, the captain in charge. You should already know the fall of your emperor. Kirk stopped, looking to see their reaction. Seeing they were calm, Kirk sighed in relief. It seemed that his task this time was easy. The supreme emperor of this land, the emperor of the Moonlight Empire, presents a decree. The people of the Westle Empire, I ask you to surrender and follow this emperor to glory. Nonetheless, you can turn your heads back and leave the cursed continent. Only the people of the Moonlight Empire, my people, are allowed to live in this land. If you wish not to die, you may leave this land at once. Kirk read the decree in a solemn tone, looking at the crowd before him. So what choice do you make? We surrender to His Majesty. We surrender to the Moonlight Empire. What a joke, those who can leave already have. The only ones remaining are ordinary people who didn't have the money or connections to leave. Especially during this time of war, the greedy businessmen of the Arcane Continent didn't let go and collected exorbitant fees to poach them from the continent. Good. Then you shall prepare, we will leave this land after a while, Kirk said. His Majesty already told them they would relocate to the Forbidden Forest, now called the Moonlight Forest. By now, various construction was probably in place, just waiting for the people to settle in. We will leave this place? Yes, this land is too small to accommodate the future of the empire. Worry not, all the expenses and food will be on us. You only need to bring yourself on board and leave the rest to us, Kirk comforted. In his eyes, these were already the people of the Moonlight Empire. Treating them as such was just natural. After seeing they understood the protocol, he left some soldiers in place and moved to the next city. A few days later, in Coal City on the border of the Westle Empire, a 10-year-old kid, Latin, held his 5 little sisters' hands as he led them to the docking station to register. The war didn't just bring death and destruction, it also left the future generation on their own. A few years ago, Latin originally had a happy family living in a little kingdom. But an army from the Westle Empire came rushing in, setting fire and bloodshed everywhere. That event took the lives of his parents, leaving him and his newly born quintuplet sisters. As a child, taking care of his siblings was a daunting thought. Taking care of them was a problem, much less feeding them. Fortunately, upon arriving in the Westle Empire, the benefits were enough for even a child to live by. A house to live in and food given to them was enough for him and his sisters to survive. From time to time, some nannies also visited, instructing him what to do. As time passed, he also forgot the hatred brought by the death of his parents. After all, life had to go on. However, after the fall of the emperor, their lives turned into a nightmare. The food didn't come and evil neighbors troubled them. After a few weeks of despair and hiding, fortunately, help came to them. The soldiers of the Moonlight Empire provided the city with food and safety, which they lacked. All the people who had done evil were either locked up or killed on the spot. During this time, Latin felt alive again, laughing and smiling with his sisters. This also made him realize his lack of strength. If only he could be as strong as those soldiers, he could always see his sisters smile, providing them with a home that could protect and nurture them. Lost in thought, Latin continued to walk to the docking station to register their identities. A gentleman told him that this was necessary to become an official citizen of the empire. Furthermore, once they were registered, they could board the ship and wait for departure. Latin didn't want to wait any longer. Once these soldiers left, they would be on their own again, trudging alone through the dangers of society. As they were walking, a soldier approached them. "You kids, where are your parents?" "No, we don't have any," Latin shook his head. The soldier also understood and looked at them with pity. "Are you going to the dock?" "Yes, mister. My brother said the food there is delicious." "Is it really delicious?" "It must be, my brother doesn't lie." "Delicious. Delicious. Okay, stop talking. You're making me hungry." Soon, the 5 sisters started arguing, making Latin and the soldier smile. "Come hop in, I'll take you there," the soldier said, taking out a mechanical car. "Is this appropriate?" Latin asked, not wanting to disturb the soldier. "No worries, I'm off duty anyway." "And you don't want your sisters to walk all the way, do you?" Hearing this, Latin also looked at his sister's swollen feet after walking for a few kilometers. As delicate children aged 3 to 4, it was already a miracle they could walk a few kilometers and still smile. Looking distressed, Latin urged his sisters to board the mechanical car. "Sit tight, we'll arrive there shortly." With amazement and wonder in their eyes, the car zipped through and reached the dock after a few minutes. "Whoa, that was fast." "Fun. Fun. Fun. Can we do it again, mister?" "I'm dizzy, can we get out?" "Ugh, I'm going to puke." "Ha ha ha, we're already here, just follow the gentlemen who wear clothes like me. They will take you to eat delicious food." Getting out of the car, Latin and his sisters thanked the soldier. Looking around, Latin didn't know where to go. The place was full of people from all over the city getting rations or registering to be citizens. "Brother, hurry, the delicious food is waiting for us." "I smell delicious food." "Hurry, hurry. I'm hungry. My stomach is calling us, brother." Latin looked lost. Finally, some kind-hearted people pointed the way to Latin. After walking for a few minutes, they arrived at the registration point. Earlier, after asking around, it seemed that you could only get food after registering. Although they were given food, it was only to pad their stomach. Only by being an official citizen could one avail its benefits and eat delicious food. "You kids, what are your names?" the registrant asked after a pause. Seeing many situations like this, the registrant already knew what to ask and what to expect. He was just shocked to see a kid carrying young kids around him. "I'm Latin, this is Lucia, Elena, Sophia, Clara, and Maria," Latin introduced. "Good, now put your hand on this." Soon after complicated procedures, the siblings registered, getting their tokens of identity. "From now on, we are people of the Moonlight Empire," Latin murmured, looking at the token. Chapter 328 Various Benefits. After obtaining the token, Latin quickly took his sister to find food. While walking, Latin studied the token. The tokens had different shapes and sizes. For them, Latin picked up a necklace-type token. Seeing no grooves and notches, Latin didn't know how to activate it for a while. Fortunately, the token seemed to sense his thoughts as a virtual panel appeared. Latin, Class 3 Citizen. Address, none. Properties, none. Profession, none. School, none. Class? Thinking about it, descriptions of citizen classes appeared. Class 3 citizens are the lowest tier of citizens, made up of various refugees who have just joined the empire like them. Class 2 citizens are the second tier, made up of original residents who were born and raised in the empire. Class 1 citizens are the first tier, which is made up of various officials and soldiers who made some contributions. Then there are star citizens, who are made up of special people who made significant contributions to the empire. Unlike the others, star citizen status is only bestowed by the emperor and cannot be obtained elsewhere. As for others, there are many ways to increase ranks. Like fighting in the battle coliseum, inventing new things, accumulating wealth, having top potential, graduating from the academy, and many more. Although he didn't know the meaning of most of it, Latin tried to keep it in his mind. Glancing at his current citizen rank, he looked through the benefits that he would receive. First, the housing. Each Class 3 citizen could receive an apartment for 25 meters in size. There was also an option to combine the benefits of the same family, obtaining a much more spacious apartment. 6 of them could live in a 150 square meter apartment, which is pretty spacious. As for food and supplies, they were not free like he thought. Instead, they were directly given moonlight coins for expenses. As a 10-year-old child, he was eligible for 1,000 copper credits per day. Although he didn't know its value, it should be almost the same as copper coins. It may not look like much, but this was already a lot. Based on the previous standard, 1,000 copper credits were enough for 10 days of food for a single adult. As for why it was given daily, it must be because other people were irresponsible spending the money all at once. Besides housing and money, there are various benefits, such as spiritual fields, business acquisitions, transportation discounts, etc. However, what struck him the most was the free education. Each citizen, no matter their age, was given free education regardless of the field. Thinking of his weak strength, he clenched his fist in excitement. Even the previous Westle Empire didn't have these benefits. It didn't even have enough resources to provide education for the majority of its people, let alone for free. While studying the token, he was unknowingly dragged by his sister to a food stall.
Brother. We want this.
We want. This smells so delicious. It looks so fluffy, it must be delicious. Brother, do we have enough money to buy this? Being asked questions one after another, Latin turned his attention to the stall in front of him. The food being sold looked like cotton made of various colors. Smelling such a fragrance, Latin subconsciously gulped.
Excuse me, how much for those?
Candy clouds? They are 30 copper credits each.
Give us 6.
Hearing the price was cheap, Latin quickly bought one for each of them. After getting the candy clouds, they took a big bite as it melted into their mouths.
Yum!
The green one tastes like delicious grass. This one tastes like meat.
Sweet.
This one is weird, it cooled my mouth like ice. Mine also tastes weird, it's like there is an explosion in my mouth. Seeing they were enjoying their snack, Latin found a place to sit as he continued to study the token. Soon, a week passed by. The first batch of immigrants was about to leave to go to the Moonlight Forest. Brother, are we going to board that big boat?
Yes, we are going to our new home.
Latin smiled, pinching their fluffy cheeks. This week, using the daily subsidies given to them, he fed his sisters fat. Looking at their bulging and red cheeks, he couldn't help but smile. Brother, don't tangle my dress, it's my favorite. One of his sisters pouted, seeing her dress a little tangled. The daily subsidies given to them were too much, so in addition to food, he bought all kinds of dresses and toys they liked. Not only was his sister well fed, but they also became more lively and cute. All right, you don't love your brother anymore. Soon, hundreds of millions of people began to board the ship. With such a crowd, Latin became worried about their safety. Fortunately, everything was orderly, thanks to the soldiers and officials. Entering their assigned room, Latin took his sister to explore the ship. After a few days, the ship quickly reached the Moonlight Forest. We arrive at the Moonlight Forest. Please leave the ship in an orderly manner and follow the subsequent instructions. Once again, welcome to your new home. After following the various virtual guidelines, Latin and his sister quickly disembarked from the ship. Around them were other ships and a sea of people. Taking out his token, he looked for the follow-up instructions. Let's see, our destination is the Spirit City. Board a car SC-385, departure 1700 hours. Seeing the instruction, Latin quickly took his sister to the automated vehicle park alongside the Tier 9 ships. With the guidance of the token, they quickly found their ride in a few minutes. It seemed that it also took their condition and distance into consideration, allowing them to find their ride quickly. The car was much bigger than he had seen from the soldier before. Inside were thousands of people who seemed to be going to the same city as him. Most of them were orphan children like them or people with a scholarly aura. Soon, the clock turned and the car departed. The journey was boring, but with the token to keep them entertained, they were not so bored. Watching various movies produced in the Moonlight Empire, they couldn't help but sigh in amazement. The Moonlight Empire was really a fairy place that they never dared to dream of before. Looking at the smile and prosperity in the movie, they couldn't help but look forward to their new home. Unfortunately, before another movie ends, a big warning flashes into the panel. 3-hour screen time ended. Please take care of your mental health and get rest.
No.
I want to watch what happened to the big man.
I want more. Bad guy. Wah.
Big man is dead. Brother, there is no more movie. As children, they were only allowed to play in the token for 3 hours. It doesn't matter if they use other devices, the token would detect it and activate the basic mode. Basic mode is a bare function without any entertainment function. Thus, looking at his wailing sister, Latin could only smile wryly. Time to sleep, there is still a long journey ahead. Soon, a few days passed unconsciously. Although their ride was fast and they were docked near the cities. The moonlight forest was too vast and the cities were too scared that a few days of travel was the norm. Arriving at the city or perhaps a construction site, they disembarked from the car.
Is this where we are living now?
It looks dilapidated.
Could we live in this place?
Brother, the city isn't finished yet.
Where do we live here?
As his sister and the crowd complained, a guide suddenly appeared before them.
Don't worry.
A place was specifically set for you. Although it's not as comfortable as your assigned house, it should be able to accommodate you for a few months. After a bit more explaining, they understood. The Spirit City and most of the city were still being built. Although the Moonlight Empire had a huge number of magicians and warriors to do work, building a place for hundreds of trillions of people wasn't easy. Furthermore, the emperor seemed to be quite strict, wanting each city to be more beautiful than the previous one. To this, Latin and the others were noncommittal. This is where they will live from now on, so the more beautiful it is, the better. As for the temporary living environment, in this kind of time, having a place to sleep and food to eat is enough. By the way, sister, could we still study in this condition? Latin asked. The reason why he chose Spirit City as a destination, among others, is its educational environment. According to what he had read, the Spirit City is a planned place for enlightenment and primary education. This is also why most people eligible to go here are children, orphans, and people who would teach. Good question. It seems that this little brother is smart. The Spirit City is one of the planned educational cities in the Empire. Of course, it cannot lack education just because of the ongoing construction. Thus, while the city is in construction, all of you would help and learn at the same time. For those interested in cooking, you would help the chef. Those interested in the array would help. Those interested in alchemy would help. Anything that should be done in the city, you must help.
Don't worry, it will be fun.
Hearing this, Latin and the others just rolled their eyes. Isn't this just forced labor? Most of them didn't even know how to read and count. How could they help with such complicated tasks? Ha ha ha, the best education is applied education. I'm sure once the city is finished, you would be proficient in 1 or 2 things. Chapter 329 Unification of Amalgamation of Will. 3 years later. In the floating castle, Maximus, who was leisurely reading a book, suddenly felt a movement in the amalgamation of will.
Huh?
After careful inspection, he noticed the amalgamation of will seemed to improve, forming a complete cycle. In the whole cursed continent, he felt the dense will of people coming to him. Is the great immigration done? 3 years ago, he moved all the people in the Westle Empire to the Moonlight Forest. Maximus thought this would be an easy thing, as a single Tier 9 ship could accommodate trillions of people. However, he underestimated the difficulty of moving. Loading and capacity are different. Although the Tier 9 ship could indeed accommodate trillions of people, the logistics, support, and time needed to fill that up could take up months. Furthermore, cities and infrastructure in the Moonlight Forest were still under construction. Priority must also be given to the original people of the Moonlight Empire to move, further delaying the immigration. He also underestimated the number of people from the previous Westle Empire. Occupying all of the continent besides the Sunsea region where the Moonlight Empire is, the Westle Empire had a population of over 3 quadrillion. This is still because of the war and chaos decreasing the number of people. The forceful conquest of the Westle Empire probably decreased the population of the Cursed Continent by at least 30%. There are also those top empires who escape once they caught wind of the Westle Empire. Overall, if not for the war, there would probably be 4 to 5 quadrillion population in the Cursed Continent. It might seem a lot, however, compared to the landmass of the continent, it was nothing. Even the 3 quadrillion people coming to the Moonlight Forest were but a drop in the ocean. They couldn't even occupy a percentage of land, even with all those people. Of course, this is also because of the lack of infrastructure and industries. Maximus expected that industries would boom in the coming tens to hundreds of years, rapidly occupying the land. Feeling the changes in the amalgamation of will, a surprise flashed into his eyes. I can control the continent? This control was like holding the key to a car. With his will, the land would move at his fingertips. Mountains and seas, trees and forests, weather and climate would form at his will. The mana, minerals, vegetation, could be moved and transferred freely. In the cursed continent, he was like a god who could control everything.
This is amazing.
It even surpasses what amalgamation of will is capable of. Terraforming the land at your will on such a large mass of land is like creating the world. Even his domain, which could do and create everything, was lackluster in comparison. His energy is limited, thus, even though his domain could spread all over the world, the area that he could control and manipulate at one time was limited. Such an absurd thing was, of course, not entirely due to the amalgamation of will. The cursed continent was once a complete world that was integrated into the ethereum realm. As the ruler of such a land, with all the beings in the land believing in him, he is equivalent to the god or creator of the dimension. As the creator, the land was like his body that he could control. Besides terraforming the land, the unity of people also brought the efficiency of the amalgamation of will production to multitudes of degrees. In the past, at least 100 ordinary people were needed to produce a unit amalgamation of will. Now, just an ordinary person could produce one. The will that Tier 1 mages and knights could produce regularly also shot up from 1 to 10. For Tier 2, they could produce 10, Tier 3 is 1,000, Tier 5 is 10,000, Tier 6 is 100,000, Tier 7 is 1,000,000, Tier 8 is 100 million. The efficiency was multiplied a dozen to 100 times. He then studied how the efficiency of the amalgamation of will multiplied. After some probing, he noticed that the amalgamation of will was directly absorbed by him. There was no loss whatsoever, all the energy produced by an individual was fully intact. Seeing this, he nodded in satisfaction. As the clock ticked, he counted the amalgamation of will being sent to him and counted how much he would get daily. A day later, his eyes widened in shock. Over 100 quadrillion? One had to know that a monarch abyss crystal could only produce about a quadrillion units of energy equivalent to system points. With a 1-to-1 ratio, 100 quadrillion amalgamation of will is equivalent to a monarch abyss.
Crazy.
This is still because the majority of people were mortal. The one who gave him the bulk of the amalgamation of will was the original residents of the Moonlight Empire. With over 1 trillion people in at least Tier 3 realm, it was already 100 quadrillion in an instant. Initially, he was worried about the coming invasion of the Abyss, not giving him time to modify the Myriad World Mall. But now, with such a huge amount of system points, he could turn the Myriad World Mall into flowers, and they wouldn't even recognize it as the same thing.
How it seems that it's time to change plans.
Originally, he wanted to stay low-key for a while and silently cultivate the Moonlight Empire. However, with such a large amount of benefits, he decided to go all out. Money, resources, knowledge, he was ready to give it all out. Maximus had only one plan: population, population, population. Quality didn't matter, Maximus only wanted quantity. More people mean more talent, and more talents mean more system points. He planned to incentivize giving birth with generous rewards. If the children brought were talented enough, Maximus could even increase the reward. Maximus also planned to poach people from various continents, whether the arcane continent, the divine continent, or the beast continent. Poaching people is the way to go, slowly nurturing them is time-consuming. Of course, this would also cost much more, but with the reward, he was willing to bear this cost. The only problem is how these continents would react. Poaching people from different continents? This was such an unconventional idea that he didn't know how they would react. Although it seemed that each continent was open and free, the differences between them were enormous. Even the closest continent to them, the arcane continent, had significant differences. It's like a first-world country compared to a barren village. Even if he took out a large sum of money, he may not even poach several people from that continent. After all, although the rewards are high, who would be foolish enough to live in barren land? As for the divine continent? Those gods were crazy about population. How could they just hand it over to him? Even more so for the beast continent, they were a different species. Immigrating out of their land to live in his human empire? Isn't that looking for abuse? However, despite these difficulties, Maximus planned to take a long-term look at this. Maybe by then he could think of a solution to this problem. Thinking of this, the land construction needed to be hastened. He can't have people living in the woods any longer. After all, without a place, how could they have time to make children? Earlier, he prevented the Shadow Hunter Guild from helping because it's costly. Furthermore, he wanted the city-building task to enhance people's sense of belonging. But now, with the benefits in front of him, screw it. He would use all his power to become the most populous continent in the Ethereum realm. However, thinking about it, he realized the land in the cursed continent was not enough. It couldn't even reach a percentage of the arcane continent, much less the ever-expanding divine continent. If the population continued to grow without living space, it would ultimately be all for naught. Digging the land under the sea is inefficient and slow. By the time they dig enough, the population would be overflowed. Furthermore, the land under the sea is too low-grade. He would have to spend a lot if he wanted to nourish it. Buying land directly is also too costly. Although he is stupidly rich, it's not enough for him to waste it just for some land. Suddenly, he thought of the most abundant material in his storage dimension. The atomic god metal, the hardest tier 9 metal in the Ethereum realm. The earth of life, a tier 9 soil that could accommodate and give birth to all things. The water of life, a tier 9 water that could heal and nourish all life. These three treasures were the ever-expanding treasure he got from the Ethereum vault. Reaching millions and billions of light years, it was more than enough to accommodate the expansion of the cursed continent. Furthermore, as treasure generated by his mana, he controlled it like the back of his hand. As for the structure of land? Like the scattered continent domains of the arcane continent, the expanding land of the divine continent, or the moving continents of the beast continent. It was too early to think about. Maximus planned to first repopulate the Moonlight Forest before thinking about it. Chapter 330 Birthing Spree. 10 years later, in Lantern City. Celebration and feasting filled every corner of the city. After over a decade, under the efforts of hundreds of millions of people, Lantern City was finally built. On stage, an award ceremony was being conducted. And the Lantern City's model couple is Beth and Richard. Let's give applause to this amazing couple. Beth and Richard walked gracefully onto the stage, receiving their well-deserved applause. Beth and Richard have had 9 children over the past decade, achieving the pinnacle of life. I wish everyone here could follow the example of this model couple and work hard, the MC advised as if it were the truth of life. The crowd was shocked to hear of the couple's achievement. 9 children in a decade? Are these 2 pigs? Sigh, what an amazing fertility. We only had 6 children despite working hard day and night. TSK, this is nothing. I heard of another city where a couple gave birth to 30 children in just a decade.
What? How is that even possible?
Hey, they had a rare condition that allowed them to give birth to multiple children in one sitting. Fortunately, the medical conditions of the empire are top-notch, otherwise, they would be laid in bed forever. TSK, what an enviable couple. Unfortunately, I don't have a wife yet. Observing the crowd, Beth and Richard simply smiled. Since the birth incentive was promulgated 10 years ago, the population has boomed like the seas and stars. From over 3 quadrillion people to over 10 quadrillion people, over 300% increase.
However, what can they say?
The rewards are really generous. An ordinary child without any talent, one would receive 1 crystal credit, which is equivalent to 10 million copper credits. As a Class 3 citizen, with daily subsidies of 100 copper, it would take them almost 300 years to accumulate that amount. Yet, after giving birth to a child, they could receive that in one lump. This is still if the child is talentless. Those with rank 1 potential could receive 10 crystal credits, those with rank 2 potential would receive 100 crystal credits, and those with rank 3 potential would receive 1,000 crystals. As for those who gave birth to rank 4 legendary potential, one would receive 100,000 crystal credits, plus various benefits, such as class increase, free property, tax exemptions, etc. Basically, after giving birth to a child of that caliber, both the parents and the child would be set for life. As for having rank 5 mythic potential, they could only drool thinking about its benefits. Just the money was 10 million crystal credits, richer than most tier 5 tier 6 individuals. Regardless, with rank 6 divine potential, one could ascend directly to the top and be nurtured by the empire. Various resources, training exercises, teachers, etc. would be provided for free. Basically, as long as a person had that talent, all the things that could be bought in the empire were basically free. They're like walking gold mines that could suck the golden blood of the empire. As for potentials above that, from transcendent to primordial potential, that was already out of the question. Even now, with the population explosion, less than 5 people have rank 6 divine potential, much less rank 7 and above. 10 years ago, Richard and Beth were originally an ordinary couple budding in love. However, upon hearing about these crazy incentives, the two got crazy and married on the spot. Marriage in the Moonlight Empire was quite easy and traditional. Both couples only had to register their marriage and swear an oath in front of the emperor's shrine or statue. After receiving their certificate, the two quickly got into the child-making activity. Watching all kinds of tutorials and taking healthy supplements, it can be said that their marriage is a happy one. Soon, a year later, a child was conceived under their love. With luck given by the heavens, their child had rank 3 potential, sending them into euphoria. 1,000 crystals. The child they were holding was equivalent to generations of wealth. One has to know that although the daily subsidies can provide them with enough food and even indulgence from time to time, it's not enough. The past is different from the present. In the past, they were only thinking about survival. As long as they had food and a home, they were already satisfied. However, after being exposed to the glamorous life they see and hear about in the token, they also wanted to live like it. Eating various exotic foods, indulging in a paradise-like place, getting a house where they could run and play, etc. The world seemed to be open in their eyes, but they couldn't reach it, like a moon in the lake. However, with the birth of their first child, all their dreams seemed to come true. Upon receiving their first bag of gold, they went on a shopping spree like crazy lunatics. All kinds of things that they had dreamed of in the past were bought and consumed. The places they had been longing to visit were finally explored and enjoyed. As for their child left in the incubation facility, they had no worries. The empire would ensure the healthy growth of a child until it had a mind of its own and needed parents. Soon after indulging in all sorts of extravagances, their money was depleted like water. Returning to their child, they couldn't help but be speechless. They had been so reckless that they used up all the future money meant for their child. Fortunately, their child met all the qualifications to advance to Class 2 citizenship. Based on potential, place of birth, and various tests conducted in the incubation facility, their child became a Class 2 citizen at birth. Apparently, becoming a Class 2 citizen now was more stringent. In the past, simply being born in the Empire would automatically grant Class 2 citizenship. Now, one has to undergo various tests, make enough contributions, or possess sufficient strength to qualify. Nevertheless, the benefits had also increased. Just the daily subsidies reached 1 gold credit, which is 10,000 copper coins, 100 times more than before. This amount alone had quadrillions of people striving hard just to qualify.
1 gold per day. Isn't that the meaning of life?
With it, one no longer needed to work and could still live a middle-class life full of delicious food and beautiful clothes. Unfortunately, they were too lazy and lacked patience, otherwise, they could have taken advantage of those free classes. With 1,000 crystal credits, they would probably be a Tier 1 mage or knight by now. Achieving that, they would reach the peak of life in an instant as a Class 2 citizen. Now, they could only rely on their child to get by. Fortunately, with a gold coin per day from their child, they could still live a nouveau-rich life. Unfortunately, after a few months, reminiscing about their fairy-like life, being nouveau-rich is not enough. Working day and night, they conceive another child. This time, they were not as lucky and only had a child with rank 2 potential, which earned them 100 crystal merits. Being smarter and not wanting to continue their cycle of giving birth and then indulging, they used the 100 crystal merits for training. Soon, a few months passed, and they became trainee mages and knights purely with resources. Seeing such progress, the husband and wife became ecstatic as they were closer to their dream of becoming Class 2 citizens. After all, although they could rely on their 2 children, it would not be pleasant once they became adults. Yes, their newly born son was a Class 2 citizen at birth, which made them envious. However, thinking that they were the ones who gave birth to them, the smiles on their faces returned. With double the good news and the 100 crystal credits depleted, the two worked again to conceive another child. Giving birth to another child with rank 2 potential, they became disappointed for a while. However, thinking of their talents, the first child probably just had exceptionally good luck to possess rank 3 potential. Fortunately, with their excellent genes, the child could still pass the test to become a Class 2 citizen at birth. After receiving their reward, they started their training journey again, consuming resources with fervor. Afterwards, when the money was gone, they continued to give birth to earn money. Basically, over these 10 years, they were busy giving birth and consuming resources. Fortunately, all their hard work was not in vain. They finally reached Tier 1 realm, fulfilling their dream of becoming Class 2 citizens. However, looking at it now, their dream seemed too childish.
1 gold coin per day?
Sure, it was awesome at first, but having achieved their strength today, earning 100 times more money was easy. Furthermore, with all their children qualifying to be Class II citizens at birth, their original obsession with money and pleasure diminished to a large degree. Now, they only wanted to train and live a longer life. After all, materialistic things are nothing if one has no life to enjoy them.